roll call. We have Rick Alexander, Scott Kendall, Casey Leahy, Steve Perroni, Sanders, myself, and Tuckerman here.
Lois.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lois. I believe that, I think Jeff said he would be joining us online. I don't know if he's not here yet. And then Katie said she probably tried to join, and then Kate Lampier will be attending as soon as she gets So we're going to move into approval of agenda. I have one request, actually two. The first is for our first executive session when our legal counsel arrives. I'd like to complete whatever section we're in and then enter into executive session so that we're not either having him wait and charging us during that time. So as long as that's okay, I just don't know where it will fall in our agenda. And then the second change to our agenda is the next meeting date is wrong. So it needs to be January 16th, 2024.
2025. What is it tonight?
2025, thank you. So those are the only additions, changes that I have. Does anyone have anything else? No? Okay. So motion to approve the agenda with the two changes. So Scott, and then seconded by Lois. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved, opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved with the changes. And then we're going to move into approval of minutes. I have something to read into the minutes. So sorry, Kate did online. Okay. Thank you. Katie Murphy is here. Is that Kate or Kate? Kate. All right. So for public comment, I believe we ran into issues. The second public comment, Sarah Stoll was trying to speak and was having technical difficulties. So she sent along a message that I'll just read into the minutes for accuracy. She says, I'm interested that one reason Ms. Williams wanted to maintain choice for Baltimore residents is the treachery of the Parkersville Gulf. No matter what, Cavendish kids travel that going to GM, and if we close Cavendish to go to the elementary in Chester, if the Parkersville Gulf is an issue, then Cavendish and Ludlow should be talking, not Cavendish and Chester and Andover and Baltimore. Furthermore, CTES recent recognition indicates that we should be looking at what works there and trying to spread this throughout the TRSU. That no board member other than the Cavendish representatives are celebrating this is remarkable. It sounds like you are willing to sacrifice excellence for cost equality. In other words, we'd rather get everyone slightly less good rather than getting everyone excellent. So that can be added into the second public comments. So is there any other changes that are needed for the meeting minutes? No? Okay, all right. Motion to approve the meeting minutes with the addition?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, so that was Lisa and Casey. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we approve the meeting minutes. We do not have students. I don't think that either one of them will be joining us, so we will not have that section. Administrators reports.
So the superintendent's report, talk a little bit about some of the district work that's been happening. We got together with the administrative team probably about a month ago to go over the options-based drills to make sure that we're keeping up on our safety standards. So we did kind of a little mini training in the administrative group, and then they're rolling that out to the staff in the schools. We had a discussion with the district leadership team about the curriculum work and what's needed to make sure that it's actually trickling down and having an impact in terms of what teachers are doing in the classroom. And one of the things that was noted there with the conversation that we had is that we kind of need a few more people, some teacher leaders who are close to the classroom, who can go into the classrooms, who can coach, and who can put a little pressure on people to make sure that they're doing the work that the curriculum parts and pieces require. We also talked a bit with the staff, and this kind of goes along with the curriculum work as well, is that, you know, they're desiring more time, which makes sense to actually be able to sit down, discuss what they're learning and what they're putting into practice with each other, and to be able to kind of reflect and adjust as they need to make sure that the curriculum work is effective in the classroom. So we've talked about potentially trying to build in some half days into the school calendar next year. If we're able to do that, that would only be for a year or two, right, until they get the work done and they're caught up to where they need to be, and then we would go back to, you know, the normal schedule with the 6 days of professional development each year. One of the things that we'll be looking at as springtime comes is we'll take a look at the instructional time that the master schedules give to the students. You know, how much time are they in contact with actual certified teacher, because that is the biggest predictor of student performance. And so there's a lot to be learned from that. In terms of personnel, Kelly English, who was my executive assistant, we were looking for a replacement for the after-school program director. We had a reasonable candidate, but when the team was talking, we decided that Kelly might have the skills for it. So we asked her if she was interested, and so she is transitioning into that after-school director position. And at this point in time, I've had 2 interviews for a replacement for her as executive assistant. Emma is taken over, as folks know, at Cavendish. And so that has left the curriculum position open, the curriculum director position open. They interviewed 2 highly qualified candidates yesterday, and they forwarded a name to me. I'm in the middle of doing the reference checks. And if it works out, if it looks really good, then I'll be putting that person in front of the board for consideration for hire. So, basic pieces. Last piece is negotiations. We have met with the teachers. The first meeting was basically just establishing ground rules and setting up future dates. The next time we will meet with them will be on January 7th. That's it, unless there's questions.
Principal's report.
Should we go through?
It's up to you. If there's anything you want to add to them,
Put a few more numbers in.
yeah, if you want to.
Well, Tuesday ski program, beginning that January 7th. We have 5 Tuesdays, 7th to 14th, not the 21st, but the 28th, February 4th, and then great opportunity for our students. We've got about 100 students taking advantage of that ski program. Winter concert was performed on December 12th. We had a very good turnout. New band director, new choral director. Kids did a great job. Parents had a good night out, and it was positive, very positive. Senior Christmas luncheon, we just did that on Saturday. Our local seniors came by, and Andy, I was talking to Andy after the weekend, and he said it was about 130 of them. And it was really awesome because some came and ate downstairs, some came in and picked up food, and some we delivered to families as well, and not families, but to singles and couples. So it was really, really positive outcome there. Just want to keep you abreast on the school mascot. I know it was last talked about. It was maybe a bone of contention, perhaps. But the kids from Student Council took on the role. They met, and 93% of Student Council felt they wanted to carry forward with it. So they surveyed all the students and staff. We had about 140 people surveyed. And again, it was 93% that felt it was time. And they actually suggested approximately 14 to 16 possibilities for new mascot. So the next steps that we're going to look at is forming a committee that's going to be well represented with community members, kids, staff, administration, board members, etc. To perhaps look at the popular names, pick 3 or 4, then put it out to a vote for students and staff to vote on. Hopefully we'll have a clear outcome, and then we can announce that. And then further to that, the idea would be to have students design a logo and then have them vote on the logo as well. And again, no real hard time frame, not that we're not trying to get it out by February or March, just get it done in the next semester, and then we can begin the next school year with hopefully a brand new mascot. So more to follow on that, and I will keep the board posted on what we're doing. Our musical this year is The Wizard of Oz. Kids are starting to really get excited about it, and it's going to be in March. I don't have the date to hand here. And last one here, Lane and I and a few others have been talking about the possibility of students returning to Green Mountain. I'm not sure how much knowledge there are, but our intensive needs kids, we have a few here now. And looking at possibly some of our ED kids returning as well, returning to their school. So we've done a bit of work. I haven't been as closely involved in the budgetary work, but there'll be certainly, we're not just doing it for a cost savings, but it will be a good cost savings there. And I firmly believe that we can take this task on and provide for all of us. More to follow on that. So that's it.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a good
Any
idea.
questions for anybody else, or did you want to add anything?
I just want to add that I started officially on December 2nd, and so I've been really excited to be at Cavendish for the last couple of weeks. And most of the time I've just been really spending listening to students, listening to teachers, and the gist of my report kind of summarizes some of my key takeaways. And also I'm excited because a lot of families are reaching out and have a couple sessions scheduled with them over the next couple weeks to meet to listen more. And we had our holiday concert that was really well attended on Tuesday, which I did share about in my report. The other thing that I wanted just to report out is that I've been working with Steph Raz, who is, her official title is in our district, is the director or early education collaborative director. So she works with our pre-K populations here in GM. So I've been working with her and been in touch with the child development division to just inquire more about next steps for preschool. So that's something that we've been working on over the past weeks as well.
Questions? John, I just wanted to go back to, in regards to the school mascot, the board members can't sit on that kind of committee. They can, if they want to be part of it, they can do it as a community member, but we can't as a board member be part of it.
Good point.
And then I would also encourage you to engage the Alumni Association. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay. And then curriculum reports and presentations. You said you're doing that as of right now?
The biggest thing to report is, that we've got a candidate that is potentially going to be able to start pretty soon, probably January-ish. And in the interim, Emma had quite a few good things that were up and running, and she had pretty much planned most of them out through the end of the year, which was awesome. So there is a couple of sessions towards the end of January that are already planned out in terms of professional development for the staff and for the admin team. And so we're going to check in just to make sure that all the final pieces are in place to make sure that runs smoothly. But she's got 90% of it set up already. So I think we're really good to go. So I appreciate that an awful lot.
All right. Is there a Todd?
He's down,
Yeah.
yeah, the basketball tournament downstairs. Not a lot of changes. I talked with him midday today. The buildings in GMU are actually in pretty good shape. We did meet and talk about the PCBs with the state liaison. The biggest thing that's going on with that right now is they're getting geared up for the next round of testing. And then planning for being able to replace the filters the next time.
For testing here.
No, I was just saying there's something waiting.
Gotcha.
Oh. So geared up for another round of testing here. Okay.
Yeah.
When are they planning? Sorry, did I?
February?
February.
I remember.
Any questions about that from anyone? Financial update.
I have a couple things for you before we get into the bond and the budget. Just to update, November's in the folder, but in October, I had mentioned about flood insurance, that it was high and that we had taken the White House down. And unfortunately, we can't get a credit back because of the way they had to purchase the insurance. We're a collaborative, and so they had to go out to National Flood Insurance to get it, so there's no refund. But we should see a decrease next year. And the other update is the lease payment. I said that we were going to get saleable equipment, and we got that check. The lease was over by $25,918, and we got $34,000 for that. So we have a little surplus left. Also, the final audit is in the folder. I believe I did tell you about the management letter the last time. Did I?
I don't remember, but maybe.
So there's two things on the management letter, and one was carryover from last year that we got cited that on the work that we did at Chester Andover, EEI had this schedule in their contract with us, and I asked him if I got it corrected, would that take it off, and he said nope. So I didn't get it, and then we got written up again for it this year. So here we are. And then the other thing we got was, that was in the letter, was about timing of money coming in. Because we get audited when the check is dated, not when we receive it. So we had a food service issue of not getting the money timely, and I've spoken with Andy about that. And so that's definitely been an improvement this year. Those are the only two things. So the question would be if you would like the audit firm to come in and give a presentation on the job.
Feel strongly about that.
Just asking.
When you say that we got written up, is there like a process that has to happen, like a kind of a corrective action like this?
So that it depends on the level. If there's a material finding, yes, I can do a corrective action report on that. This is just kind of a management letter. I'd like.
Okay.
So the other thing that I would like to address before we get in there is allowable tuition. It's due January 15th, and we don't need to talk after that. So we need to get it done this time. So this year, we have it at 18,000. And when I go in to look at what our allowable tuition is, which is this statistical report that I send in August, they take that, they work their magic, and they take out things that elementary. They look at the high school expenses and divide by the number of students that we have. They said our allowable tuition was $22,496 today. It was, they're still adjusting things because it was higher. So we have to do an announced tuition for FY26. And my recommendation for elementary is to maintain the 16,000 because that's falling in, but to raise the high school to 22,000.
Do you need to vote for that? Or somebody like to make that motion?
So made.
Or actually, is there any discussion about that? Okay, so motion to have the elementary tuition at 16,000 and increase the high school tuition to 22. Scott made it.
Scott didn't,
Who's second?
Scott didn't make it.
You didn't, oh, Rick, I'm sorry. Definitely. All right, who seconded it?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
So we are already looked at what, for last year. We did it before we built back Loveland Holly's your biggest tuition. So you have about 64,000 coming back in revenue. That's it for me unless someone has any questions. On budgets.
I like combo. Let's get this up. So the bond discussion, I think at this point in time will depend upon the discussion from the board about restructuring, right? Because at least the recommendations that we gave, and that seemed to be most on folks' minds was about construction at Chester Andover. And that would be a bond project that would then be reimbursed from FEMA at 90%. We had a good conversation with them a couple of weeks back. And what they said is that there's actually a bunch of other little groups out there that they would work with us with, so that, if there was any money that we potentially would have to pay out of pocket, like that 10%, they would fill in the gaps. So they seem very positive about that.
And it would even be more in addition to that, because if we had a project that was like 1.8 million, and we got 1.4, which we're not going to get, they would fill in that other $400,000 gap, or work with us to try to get the money. And it's grants. So FEMA has a disaster recovery fund that has some money in it through USDA, and some mitigation fund that they give grants out. Not guaranteed, but it's an option.
Did you get it in writing?
Not yet.
Okay.
There's people that's willing to come and talk to the board.
Yes, I think that would.
That would be great.
If
That would be-
if you can get them on camera saying it.
Yeah, that's Yeah. as good as I can do.
You want to set that up in January?
Would you like to, does January sound like a?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh?
Soon.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean the board has to accept any of the recommendations there. There's some, positive outlook there in terms of potentially being able to be reimbursed if we do that work.
All right, so this would be a representative from FEMA.
Well,
State liaison.
the state liaison.
Okay.
Potential full reimbursement then between FEMA and these other groups.
The biggest question, they seem pretty genuine. So I think they're being very straight up. The biggest question to get out of them is, when would the reimbursement come? It would be the timing of it.
Just need it in writing.
Yeah.
And we also had a proposal in for a certain amount of money, and there was going to be some response to that about whether that amount would be reimbursed or not. Do we have any information?
So they have not responded to us.
Okay.
So my understanding is they respond and then we negotiate to settle on what that reimbursement would be. And whatever that reimbursement would be, 90% of that is what they would give us for 428 for the project.
So in other words, you actually have to make a decision on what you want the construction project to be. We give that to them, and that's kind of how it starts.
Cheryl, the 428, that's the actual number of the project.
FEMA, that's the FEMA logo, lingo for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can move on to budget. So what we're going to do is kind of very similar to last time. There's been some changes, but one of the things that we have this time is, potential tax rate outlook. And this is based upon the proposal that we did last time, plus a few changes that were made as things were kind of reanalyzed. It's actually, compared to what's happening in the state, it's not great, but it's also not bad. We had a pretty tough discussion at the Ludlow Mount Holly side yesterday. I mean, even if they don't add anything to the budget, even if it's pretty much level funded, they're looking at a 30 cent per $100 of assessed value increase. So there's a lot of discussions happening over there about, what we want to do. So you are in much better shape. It's always important, and this has been updated a little bit, and we'll talk about this as we go through. Right, as you're planning a budget, you want to be as informed as possible, so you look at the current financial landscape that's out there. And folks do remember, right, last year's tax increases, right? The majority of the districts across the state did not vote in their budgets on the first round. And so one of the things that might be affecting our ability to get our budget passed is the taste that people have in their mouth from last year. The governor sent out an updated letter, and he said, on average, you're going to see taxes go up 5.9%, and that's assuming people aren't adding anything major to their budgets. So at a minimum. He had it at 7% earlier in the summer. They've now got it at 5.9%. I've got that crossed out, right? We've got a new federal administration that's coming in that's had a lot of discussion about education and the Department of Education. We have the knowns now, and I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. And then the last piece that might be affecting things over the next couple of years is the outcome of the Education Funding Committee work. They did a preliminary draft that they had to give to the legislature on December 15th. They provided no recommendations in the draft. So they have to provide the full document next year before the legislative session starts. So presumably the legislators will use that to try to hopefully fix the education funding in the state. So we got some major changes. It'll be an interesting couple of years that are coming up. U.S. Department of Education is currently unfunded. The funding for the Department of Education was passed by the U.S. Senate. They actually did additions to it in their version of the bill. They were adding quite a bit of money. It got over to the House, and what the House has done is they've just been sitting on it, waiting for the new administration to take over. In typical districts, about 10% of their finances come from these grants that come from the Department of Ed. And it's significantly more if you've got a high proportion of disadvantaged students, because the grants are designed to help those types of students. So the things that the House is proposing on its side in terms of education is reducing Title I funding by 25%. Title I funding is what we use to actually work directly with kids, intervention, things like that. They want to eliminate Title II funding. Title II funding is used for professional development for teachers and coaching for teachers. They want to eliminate Title III funding, which doesn't really impact us that much. Title III is about English language learners and providing them with resources if they're coming in and English is their second language to help them learn the English language. They are going to level fund the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. That's money that goes to special education and helps support students on IEPs. Beyond that, they are going to eliminate all ELL funding, so all English language learner funding, and then the elimination of funding for any social emotional programming with the students, and then a 70% reduction in school-based mental health services grants. And those last two are probably the most concerning for me and probably the administrators here at the elementary level, because a lot of what we are seeing that's been growing since COVID is emotional disturbance in students. It's gotten to be pretty widespread. So in terms of the potential impact on us, the consolidated federal programs monies, that's the title monies, we usually receive about $706,000. If they follow through and the House bill goes through, we're going to lose a little over $250,000. And the question came up last night, and I've been thinking about it. Since this is that would impact funding for the next school year, it could potentially impact funding for the next school year. It's the next fiscal year for them, but it's next school year for us. So it could be coming down the pipe quicker than we think. Questions on this piece?
The level 1, 2, and 3 funding from the feds. And also the way this money's allocated in their bill, does that have direct sway over how to spend that money? Or is it just,
They're just reducing the amounts that they're going to
Okay.
get. So what we do with these, like if it's Title I money, you know, it's meant to do direct services to kids. We get our chunk of money, and then we take a look at our continuous improvement plan that we've given to the state. And as long as what we are using the money for coincides with that continuous improvement plan, what it's saying our needs are, then they will grant us that money. So we do an application and say, hey, you know, our math scores are weak, so we need some math interventionists. And they say, yep, that's logical. Here you go. You can spend it on that. So that's kind of how that approval process works.
May not have an answer to this, but when do the lawsuits come in about this? Right, so as soon as the House passes whatever it is that they pass, it seems very likely that there would be lawsuits about equal rights to education and the fact that if you're a U.S. citizen but an English language learner, you still have a right to a fair education. And so I'm just asking, do you have any idea about kind of the timeline in terms of, you're saying potentially it's for next academic year, but there's also the potential that lawsuits, for example, push everything off for.
So if they potentially have a supportive Supreme Court, so typically what would happen is if a lawsuit comes up that has, you know, potential merit, you know, they do an injunction and things would progress as they always have. In this case, I don't know if that would happen.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, I can't prognosticate, but
Yeah.
my guess is that it may not. And, you know, they do, as part of the legislation, they do have to decide on how much they are going to fund the Department of Ed with. I mean, that is within their control in terms of the purse strings. So I don't know if there is a challenge to it.
So they could say all of those things are still true in terms of we need to provide English as a second language services, but we're not going to fund it. Okay.
Didn't say it was well thought out.
Right. No, I had no expectation that it would be.
So we kind of lump things, or at least I lump things into two kind of big categories. We've got what we call discretionary funding. So these are things that we're asking for that are above and beyond. They're needed in terms of us to be able to achieve our academic mission with students. But if we had to cut things, we could survive and muddle along without them. So there is about a little over $500,000 in discretionary expenses, and we kind of talked a little bit about this last time, what these things are. There is no change in terms of that as you're looking at this budget draft. Where there has been a little bit of change, and I'll explain this, it's not as complicated as it looks, is we also have mandatory expenses. These are things that we have to pay. Like we have an agreement with the teachers about what their salaries are and what their raises are from year to year. Those are things that we're legally required to pay. Health insurance, dental plans that we've agreed with the staff that we're going to provide. And so a lot of what you're seeing on the left is that's the increase over last year. Last year's amount that we presented in November. And there's been some adjustments on some of them since last month. So if you take a look at number 3, so that's support staff salary, retirement, and workers' compensation, you see that there's been an adjustment of $28,600. I think that's a recognition that some of the staff members are applying to be moving over a column on the pay scales. So it'll cost a little bit more money to be able to supply their salaries. The central office assessment is going down. What the TRSU charges Green Mountain is going down by $25,000. And I'm assuming, and Cheryl might be able to answer this is because you had positive news in terms of our student enrollment numbers. Yeah.
It did change.
Yeah. Yeah, because it doesn't really depend on the number of students you have anywhere, which is really freaky. But so number 9, we had put aside money. We have to estimate, where we think negotiations with the teachers union is going to land. So we kind of took a look around the state and said, oh, we think it's about this percentage. So we put that money into the budget because we probably won't have negotiations wrapped up until the budget's passed. The budgets have been voted on. But in talking with legal counsel and some other folks out there, it looks like, they're suggesting we put a little bit more in. And so we're going to raise that by 36,000. And then there were a bunch of little adds and subtractions from the budget that weren't worth actually talking about individually, but they do add up to a savings of 26,000. So last time when we came here, we were talking about 1.2 million in mandatory expenses. We're adding 12,000 to it.
Just real quick, in the previous slide, it had the preschool expenses as at Chester and Andover.
Oh yeah, that's got to be changed. That's Cavendish. I think we talked about that last time. But yes, you are correct. And those expenses, that's for the 2 staff members, and the 40,000 it would be the one-time cost to make sure that the room's up to code.
Do we have, that's still up for should we move forward with construction?
Yeah.
So.
That's why it's discretionary.
But are we going to be asked to vote on that prior to any, I guess we have to come to that decision before we could be asked to vote on that. Would be my, okay.
Yeah. And Emma and Stephanie are doing a good job, trying to figure out what's got to happen to the space. And so, we'll have a better idea on the cost of that as soon as the state comes down and does an evaluation.
So just for the record, that's mislabeled. Should it be CTES?
Yeah.
Should CTES.
And then we talked about this last time, there were savings from a variety of different things that were reducing, the amount of the change that we're looking at this year. I don't know if there's questions on any of those. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory. The 71,000, what was that bond for? Was that for a roof? Yeah. So this is the last payment, or actually it's been paid in full. And so the money that normally would have been paid for that is in the budget. So it's available to do some things. So what we're looking at, so 2024-25 up there, 16.5 million, based upon this proposed budget for next year would be 18.1 million. So the total change is 1.5 million, and $500,000 of it is discretionary. The rest is mandatory. So one of the ways of thinking about this is that, if the board says, nope, we see the tax rates we got to cut. Cutting the discretionary, yeah, it's not ideal, but we can live with it. If you go beyond that discretionary amount, what that means is you will be either impacting staff or programs. If you get rid of the discretionary piece, it's what we call a level service budget. We're increasing the budget, but it's just the amount we need to make sure that everything we're doing this year continues into next year. See if I can actually explain this logically, but one of the things that's impacting that 1.5 million that you're looking at as an increase is that last year, to try to help out and get the budgets passed, $500,000 was taken out of your reserves and used to subsidize the budget. That was one-time money. So the budget right now is built upon having that money. Since you don't have a source for it to pull from anymore, it comes from the regular budget. And so the regular budget is increased by that $500,000 amount. Go for it.
On the revenue side.
On the revenue side.
On the revenue side.
You're going to confuse them with revenue because we usually just look at expenses.
Well, that's where it comes into play because we're offsetting taxes by taking the budget out of the surplus. So now instead of it coming out of our reserve fund, it's got to be raised in taxes.
And so this is when we talk about a cliff. That's a cliff. Okay. And so one of the things that you might want to talk You could roll over what's left to subsidize next year. You could vote to put it in the reserve funds, and we should probably say a few things about that. Or you could do a combination of the two, split it. When we were talking the other day, it sounds like we have not been having the town actually vote to put the money in a reserve fund. The problem with that is it's okay to do, but it's unprotected. The state in the past has talked about reaching out and taking the reserves from districts. My understanding in talking with legal counsel a few years back is if the towns vote on putting the money into the reserve during the March 2nd vote, because they voted on it, the state can't touch it. So it adds a little bit of protection. So what we used to do in OSSD, if I had $1 million in surplus, I would put items on the ballot that said, okay, we have $1 million in surplus. I am asking the town to take 500,000 of that and put it into our facilities reserve fund. And so they're voting on putting the money into that reserve fund, and it's designated. It can only be used for facilities.
Town made that decision.
Yep.
Taxpayers.
Yeah, because it's their money.
Delineated like that?
What's that?
It was delineated like that? I don't recall it being. We haven't done.
We haven't done, we,
I would say, all right.
we put it in our budget and transferred it. But it's not.
So it's the school budget as a whole. It wasn't
Yeah,
parsed
so
out like that.
taxpayers technically have voted on it, but not in the way the state wants it to.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's usually the best way. And like I said, the big benefit is that if the state turns around at some point in time and says, we want your reserve funds to help us out, it's protected. They can't.
If the town itself votes on it as its own issue.
Yeah, it's their own money. They're voting on what to do with it.
Safer.
Protects you from that.
And it shows up as a separate item that people go on to
Ballot item.
for the budget, and it gets that.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing coming here and seeing how they did that. All right, so we're going to talk about tax rates, and I've been surprised. Vermonters are actually pretty understand how the taxes work here. I guess probably because they've been high for years and years and years. But this little part of the discussion is just to make sure that people understand kind of how they work before we talk about the potential rates in the four towns for next year. The biggest thing to recognize is that taxes are calculated by how much you have to pay the state for each $100 of your property value. Right? So if my property is worth $100, the tax rate tells me how much I have to pay. If it's $200, the tax rate is how much I have to pay is going to be times 2. This year, for example, the Andover tax rate was $1.78 for every $100 of a property's value. So that means $100 of value, you pay $1.78 taxes. And so to do a little bit of math, so imagine if you got a $500,000 home in Andover with a tax rate of $1.78, and that's for each $100 in property value. The first question is, how many groups of $100 can be formed from that $500,000? Right? It's 5,000. So you got 5,000 groups of 100. You're going to have to pay $1.78 on each one of those groups of 100. And so the math becomes pretty simple. You multiply the 5,000 times the 1.78, the tax rate, and on that home, the taxes would be 8,900 or in that ballpark. It's important to recognize that what we're calculating is school tax because you also pay town tax, and they come in on the same bill. So we're just looking at the school tax piece. So people's actual taxes that they're writing the check out for is going to be higher than this because the town tax is on it as well.
This is about 2/3 of your tax bill, if you don't know.
Yeah, no, the schools are much more than the towns usually. So tax rates, see if we can make sense of this with one column. So you've got the 2024-25 tax rate for Andover, we said was $1.78 per $100 of assessed value. Based upon the budget that we have been discussing, the draft that you have before you, the tax rate in Andover would go up to $1.92. That's a 14-cent increase. So a person with a $500,000 home would see a $700 increase in their taxes. If you have a $250,000 property, right, it would be $350. And so one of the other things I did just to make it easier for people to do the math, the Ludlow folks suggested this is right. It would be $140 for every $100,000 of value. And so, right, Baltimore would see an actual decrease. Let's see if anybody knows why that happened.
There.
Because we just got assessed.
They got assessed, and what happened to the values of their homes? Now they went down.
Value?
Yeah, so they got assessed here. The values went down, so
I thought
they're
you meant
paying.
the value of the house. I'm like, nope.
They're
That's not the value.
they're paying construction taxes. So they're actually, if they got a $500,000 home, they're looking at a $750 decrease in their tax rate. And that's because it seems to be happening across the state, happened in my area up there. Usually the year or so after an assessment, this change happens and then you get a savings. Cavendish, right, 17 cents, so 850 for that $500,000 home, and Chester would increase by 23 cents, so 1150. So just to put things in perspective for folks.
This is all after the CLA.
Yeah, so the CLA, the impact of the change in property values is in here too. This isn't just the school side. So, thoughts, questions? Like I said, we were talking in the 30-cent and 35-cent range over at Ludlow, and that's going to be what's happening in most towns this year. So even as ugly as this looks, you're actually in better shape than most.
Thank you for this breakdown, though.
Yeah,
Super helpful.
We can email this around too, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
But so that the piece that the board would need to decide is, okay, is this acceptable? If not, then you got to talk about what your strategy is. You can say, Lane, Cheryl, we want you to go back. We want you to change this. We want you to focus specifically on improving academic performance. Or we want you to go back and specifically work on bringing those tax rates down.
Just a question as we head into budget season, because I'm sure it's going to come up at some point from us or the public. What is our bottom line of impact, really? Right, because the CLA controls.
It changes from year to year. We can actually do that calculation. So what controls the CLA the most is how it changed from last year to this year. So if it was 60 this year and then it goes up to 151, like happened in Baltimore, right? You're going to have a significant change.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think that's what the struggle was. A big part of last budget season is people not understanding that we could cut our budget to nothing, but because of the CLA, that people's taxes would still increase. Yeah. So, when the questions come around, I guess I'm asking like what?
So what I do?
What can we?
Yeah, what's the
control?
big control as far as that?
The local understanding is
You
that
can't.
we have a lot more.
Yeah,
control.
so what we usually do is when I'm having the open forums, is I'll break that out into two columns. This is the impact the schools are having on your taxes, and this is CLA. We can't control this. And most people kind of understand that, even though, they recognize their taxes are going up. But like in OSSD, our revenues were going up every year. We were spending a heck of a lot more every year, but our revenues were outpacing it. So their tax rates were going down on the school side, but their taxes were going up overall because their property values were rising.
And most of your towns are on a waiting list to be reassessed because there's only one or two. I don't know. You might know, Sean. I think there's one or two companies that do it in the whole state.
There's probably four, but they're all booked.
But like Andover's been waiting for years. 25 a time.
Yep. Yeah. So.
It would be helpful, I think, to see kind of like that chart that you just had up there, like two versions of it. This is the impact with all of the discretionary spending. This is the impact if you did absolutely none of it. I'm not saying we would do one or the other, but just to give a sense of like how much can we change those, dollar per 100 amounts based on our decisions here.
Yeah. And that we can figure that out easy enough.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Cheryl's like, I'm looking at her.
Figure it out.
Want to bet?
Well, that, if it's not a feasible request,
No, it
It
is,
is.
it is.
It's just hard to do it on the fly when they're.
No, not right now, not right now. For once we get it.
I brought it up early because that's.
Yeah.
As soon as people see more increases, they go cut something and stop it. And
Or-
I'm trying to get ahead of it a little bit, at least conceptually.
Or we turn around and say, do you really want to decimate your schools? Because
Yeah.
your taxes are going up regardless.
Because you end up
Because
chasing-
it depends on what the other districts are doing.
Right, you're
Right.
also chasing your CLA. If you're cutting your budget, you're chasing that CLA as it decreases until we get to that point where you do the assessments.
The other thing that's important to recognize is the state really doesn't know what the tax rates are and the yields are until after the March 2nd vote. So we're estimating as best we can, but nothing is locked into place until that vote happens. So all this could change. Could be better, could be worse.
Well, that's if all the budget's passed.
Yeah. So after all the budgets pass is when they're able to actually cut their rates. But what I would argue, what would be ideal is that one of two things. We come into the next board meeting, you tell us the scenarios you want us to run, and we present them to you, and then you can say, okay, we'll vote on that one. Or if more discussion is needed, I would suggest, a special meeting between now and the next board meeting, just to get more details of people if they need it. So those are my recommendations. Actually, make sure the chair.
I just wonder what the deadline is for having the budget so that you can get it on the warrant.
So January 24th. Yeah, you have to vote on it within a certain time frame because it has to be known by the public for a time frame before they vote on it. So January 24th would be the rough date.
This budget doesn't take into account the federal cuts, does it? Compensating for the federal cuts, which are going to happen and have tremendous impact.
Yeah, the $250,000, quarter million, and I hate to put it in this terms, but it gets people to be thoughtful. A teacher's probably 110,000 if you include all the benefits in there. So, you're talking about 2.5 teachers.
And then mental health component of it is very troubling considering the status of the school.
Yeah.
I think that, you brought up, what do you want to see? And I think that, clearly we want to see stable schools where students can achieve. And if we are looking at this shortfall, it's very important to consider how devastating that's going to be to a program.
What you could do is you've got that 700.
Items that we're running, getting to that same chart, be if we made up fully for the projected federal cuts by adding them to our budget. I feel like that's kind of a better bookend than having the proposed budget ignoring the federal be our highest estimate, that at least comparing it to what kind of budget we would need if we made up all of the federal cuts in our budget. I agree. Just to know.
Sure.
Do you want that to be based upon the draft budget we have or with discretionary cut from it?
I would say the draft budget plus the federal make.
One of the things, if it's possible, in terms of the discretionary piece, I would argue, and I would ask the chair to let Pam speak for a minute, is that on the scenario that we do with the discretionary spending is that we potentially keep the wellness, the 84,000 for the wellness piece in there. But Adrian, we need to recognize
Go
you.
ahead.
So I'm Pam O'Neill, the guidance director. This is Jess Kessler. She's really the woman behind this
Yeah,
movement.
you guys can come up here so we're not turned around.
And I know that there were some questions last time, and we apologize. We got that we weren't able to attend, but I know John had answered some. And I think, you'd heard Jess and her Rolling Foundation. We got what was it, $100,000 that we used, did a lot of research on this, and really, this coordinator, wellness coordinators, we kind of call it in-house, really can facilitate and engage our students in active learning. There are things that are already happening in the district when students come out and they self-regulate. They've done it in the elementary schools. They kind of go to the back of the room. There's some activities they do, and they come back. We've been able to man it periodically with just the staff we have, but definitely what's coming down from the feds is absolutely scary for us. Because to think that the mental health piece, we were years and years ago was able to get our school-based clinician into our building. But right now, not only do we have our full-time school-based clinician, but we have a need that we have a clinician who comes down from the Chester Andover 1 day a week. We have an outside counselor that we provide space for a day and a half. We have 1 day a week, a month sojourns. Sojourns comes in where students who can see doctors when their parents aren't able to get them. We have a hygienist who comes in. So this hub and this wellness, this community, not only school-based, but community wellness is really important. And if funding is going to go away, we certainly have a student assistant professional position that is federally funded that does a lot of stuff for us, but the chance of not having that and talking about increasing academic and scores, if we don't have kids who can engage or feel comfortable, or who this position would also go out and work with families without a power dynamic. If one of us are going, an administrator or teacher, there's this, I'm going to come into your home and, immediately parents tend to go, they regress, whatever their high school experience was is where they go back to. And so this is just someone who just cannot connect it to any academic or that piece. It's how can I help you bridge that area? We've seen great growth in students being able to self-regulate and to get back. We know with some other programs are coming that will be housed in our building. We need to take care. We need to take care of all of our students. So as special ed programs are coming back, we also have regular students who need just as much support, and sometimes it's harder for us to identify and to ask.
And they're using the space, but could use it much more if we had a designated person who was in it all the time. Like we've been kind of piecemealing, and we've been, coordinating the outside services to come in, which it's been very successful, even though we're kind of like all doing it sort of as we can. But to have a designated person would just make all of that more fluid, and it would make more students and families be able to access. Yes, and it would be more
And
consistent.
that would be more consistent for our staff. So we come here, and what we've been able to do is with the grant, as you can see, we've been able to purchase things for the space, and I think you saw the space. That is things that have been through the grant. We wish we could use the grant for people, but that's not what we're able to do. And the research that we've done in the visits through her grant has allowed us to assess what our kids and what our needs do. And we have done some mental health, school-wide mental health surveys through the state that have helped us to identify students who may be in that or may, I don't know,
May need more services.
more services
We just did the middle school, and that went really well. And we're going to do the high school. We're going to survey the high school in January, and then the whole school once more before the end of the year. So we'll also have like data points throughout the year to kind of track how our interventions are working or not working, or how our overall student wellness is going and building.
and be able to adjust our programming. to
Yeah.
that. But I really, this is really, really important to, you know, our department, our school, our whole community, because we really do service everybody and it's our growth. So I would really ask that not be, I mean, I understand the problem, the seriousness of this budget thing, and I've been here almost 18 years now and have seen us have some really tough times and have to make some really hard decisions. And I really hope that this is not one of them. And if it does, I have the opportunity to look in and say, what else is there? Over the years, we've done a lot of that, you know, do we want this or this? What part do we feel has the greatest impact on kids and would be the most harm? You know, I believe we do great stuff here. I mean, we can always do better, but we're also been in years when you're doing the best with what you have. And when you know, it's not like we're doing the best that you can because we don't have those kind of resources. But we are, it's a great place to be in. We take really good care of our kids, and it really, yeah, we do. We can do lots of things, but we're pretty creative. We're pretty out of the box thinkers. So.
And if you haven't seen the space,
or have questions,
or you have questions, please reach out to one of us, and or we can try to answer them now if you have. You know,
I know you.
Yeah, timeless.
You said that you were going to have like data points to be able to present. Do you guys have stuff now?
Not yet.
We just have the initial data from. So I mean, we could
get it together for another.
It's for the middle school, and we have data points from the end of last year just for high school. I think they're going to be much more useful when we have, you know, more than one to compare. But we do have kind of, I guess it's kind of like a baseline for.
We could put some, I'm looking at put some data together because we're not open consistently. So students will come to the guidance office. We'll kind of assess where's the best place they need to be. And then we got to look at us in our office, say, okay, who's going over here
We keep a daily
do this
log
scale.
of
And so I think we could, like what's being used with the amount of time that's open. We certainly are open during middle school and high school lunch because those are the hardest times for students sometimes. So that's a pretty consistent time, but.
It may be helpful to have some, just like quantify that, you know, I know it's not open all the time, but some sort of data point to maybe make it less abstract to us. If we're going to be voting on it, it would, you know,
I'm sure. And that January, I think or any other, January.
We can
we can do
by the
it.
next meeting.
Yeah,
we can
for sure.
have that.
Yep, thank you. Thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
thank
And
you.
we're pretty passionate about this stuff, so we just do it for a living. No. Right?
Thanks, Ken.
Kate?
Thanks. I would also love to see some data on reimbursable services. So services that we're paying, that we're providing, that are getting reimbursed by insurance. I'm just curious. There are programs in the state that you can draw down Medicaid funds, and we're not using them in our district. And I just wonder if that is something that we need to think about. The Success Beyond 6. That's a wholly Medicaid funded program. And if we're not taking advantage of it, how much money are we spending that could be drawn down from Medicaid?
What was the name of that, Kate?
Success Beyond 6.
Thank you.
And I am bringing this up because it's a contract with a designated agency. I work at a designated agency, so I want to put that conflict on the table, but it is something that has continually, I've wondered about that because it's not free, but it does bring in resources to the school district.
One more piece that in the future would be nice to hear about is what classroom teachers are reporting, experiencing about having the service available to students. I imagine in a scenario where if the teacher doesn't have to provide that support and knows the student is safe and has a place to go, it could be a lot better, but it'd be really helpful to have any information on that. Yeah. Thanks.
Would you be the person that would bring that forth, like the reimbursables, or would that be them? Like if there's any of that information?
I'll talk later about
Okay. All right.
No.
it. So I have two scenarios to bring back. One is with the projected federal cuts on the current budget that we have in draft, and another one with picking up the discretionary. Is there other scenarios that we bring back?
I have with the cuts, and then what did you just say? The draft for the cuts, and then making up for the discretionary, making up for the federal cuts. I mean,
Yeah, that was one, and then the other one was taking the discretionary that Lane had identified out.
is there any other scenarios anybody wanted?
Yeah, I'll take the bait. Lynn talked about, what would you like to see in the budget? And you know, I'm very concerned about outcomes. I'm very concerned about, you know, a stable, positive environment where we can provide the best education for our kids. So if there are things that we'd like to add on the education level, for example, with Emma moving to CTES, we're replacing the curriculum director we have for a well-organized program for improved, continuous improvement. If there are things that we can use, people that we can bring, or services that we can bring in to complement that plan to really, you know, fuel that, I'd love to see. I'd love to see what we're missing.
I don't know how that you would do that.
You
Like, I
talk
think,
about-
yeah,
You talk about, like, for example, you know, we talked about going from portable buildings to, you know, middle ground to fully functional thing.
you're talking about restructuring.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm going back to education. I'm talking about it's a weird paradigm. I'm talking about using like the basic to the good to the best. And you know, how much more is it going to cost to get a better product? If we spent 20 more cents per dollar, is that going to give us a hugely better product?
I have no idea how you would quantify that to bring that to the board. That's what I'm saying. I don't know exactly what you're asking to be presented.
Okay, so specifically, if we are short on a brilliant math teacher or short on a brilliant science teacher, we know where our deficiencies are in terms of testing. And, you know, is there a way to support that with better staff? Do we want to?
I think we talked about it. Again, I don't know how Cheryl would be able to identify, like, there's this,
I would identify it.
yeah, like, there's this deficiency in this particular grade, and then if we added in a, you know, a higher, like, I don't know how to, maybe I'm not understanding. If somebody else is understanding, please jump in and, like, help me.
Kate's trying to build it.
Kate,
I don't know if I'm understanding, Steve, but what I saw the you know, in your PowerPoint presentation, there was a slide about what is your financial strategy. And I think what you're saying is we want an excellent school. So what else do you need in the budget to make the school excellent? And we want to see that one. And how much would that cost? So I think what you're proposing, Lane, is what we need to run the school and continue to do great work. What would be like your not wish list, because that's a little over the top, but like what would be some things that would make it an excellent school from your perspective? Our school's excellent from your perspective, and put some of those in the budget and see what that looks like. Is that what you're saying?
That's actually, it's a really good question, Steve. The highest performing schools in the country, you know, we talked about, you know, a curriculum director. They have a curriculum director at least for math, one for ELA, and one for science.
That's great.
And because it's really, and I think, I don't want to speak for Emma, but we kind of talked a little bit about that. Being an expert in all those areas and leading a curriculum initiative across 3 disciplines is incredibly difficult, if impossible.
Didn't we we have a curriculum director for math and for English up until recently.
Through the grant.
We had
Yeah,
the grant.
through yes. Smart move.
And Pietro is here.
All right, well, hold on. So I just want to make sure we're finishing up and no one else has any other questions before we move to the next. Is everybody good with the bond and the budget discussion and scenarios? Are you clear on what's?
Yes, but I want to, at the end of the agenda, we want to set another budget meeting in the event that we need it because our schedules are filling up. We just want to like preserve that day if
All right, so we will address that at the end, but
Yeah.
adding an additional budget meeting if needed. Okay. All right, so if there's no other questions in regards to this, we will insert the first executive session before the committee reports. So let's,
I propose that the board enter an executive session under Title I, Section 313A1F to consult with our legal counsel. Additionally, I suggest that we invite Lane and Cheryl to join us in this session.
Second.
all in favor of entering into executive session as stated?
Aye.
Okay, we will now enter into executive session once everybody is, and can you text Jeff and I will text Kate?
Do I need to go to a different, the different Zoom link?
I think we're gonna try and do it by breakout room. Is that what you decided? Like?
Yeah, Pietro, I'm gonna try to do a breakout room. If anything ends up not working well, just come back to this meeting link. Pietro, I'm gonna set it up so that you should see the link come up and you just join.
Okay.
Kate Murphy,
They're gonna join here.
I think they're gonna try and join here.
So you're gonna want to open breakout room that you made. And you're gonna get kicked.
I go back up.
So it would be speak so highly when he's nice.
Was that not ridiculous?
It's something.
Nothing.
Yes. I'm not sure, do you? Yeah.
That's
Total waste of.
This is like the class, you missed the assignment. You didn't turn in.
There's a good one. I just wanted to say that it comes up. And
We're just waiting for another person to join so they know where they're going.
Okay, so it looks like Jeff Hans was able to join, so now. All right, and Katie is, she's gonna step out of wherever she's at.
Okay. Did she say she was coming?
Yeah, she said she's just stepping out and so I guess wherever she is, she has to step out.
Okay. Oh, yeah, here.
Because I'm not seeing that.
Did Sean take his recorder? or
So just out of
sitting on-
curiosity, so this breakout room, will it be recorded?
Yeah, I think that's the remote. I'll check for you.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah, it's just the remote.
Well, we don't want to, I just want to make sure that,
Watch for
like,
your, you want to look and see if you're recording.
So that's the recording.
Yeah. And I'll stay in the main room and pause recording there, because you don't need to record dead air.
Yeah, I don't see Katie yet. Thank you for being patient, by the way.
just give her 1 moment and then we can just go into the breakout session and.
Lawyer's charging us by the
There's a
hour.
way, like, if she shows up. if there's
Well, if
a-
I stay in, I think if I see her, I don't know if
He's
I might be able
listening.
Did
to.
you want to do
No.
Sure.
I'm still gonna be in online.
Yeah.
I would say open the room and see if people can get in there. You're probably gonna be invited to join the breakout room, those of you who are on Zoom.
I'm
There they go. Hopefully, Pietro, hopefully you get a link. Let me know if not. Yep. He moved over. Jeff's in there.
So I guess my confusion is the people
So if I
that,
see Katie, you want me to put her in the
yeah,
breakout room?
please.
Yeah. How do I enter the room so that we can
They
interact?
do it all the time. Yeah, they
You
do.
can switch to.
I can ask for-
You-
You're not first, I'll figure out your insurance.
Just insurance wasn't scalable in some insurance.
Right.
So just say it's something happening.
I said my cell phone insurance paid for itself.
Are the people that I'm seeing online, like Jen Harper, MK Carlson, Craig Cut,
Join.
I haven't yet, but are they still gonna have
They're gonna
access?
stay in the meeting.
So they are not connected in any way to this.
Right, I'm actually gonna, Lane, I think we should disconnect the Zoom room, because you don't need the Zoom room, you're all, right, or do you?
Well, we're gonna have to go back to the other room, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna stay there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back to that
The
one.
problem is it's not projecting up there, the Zoom, the breakout room.
Yeah, well, you didn't, the Zoom room was not given as an option to join the breakout room. So,
I can see them, but
If my name's on it.
we need to have them on the screens.
Is my name on it? So good idea. Great idea.
you need to have two on the screen.
There's also no sound, like Kate and.
Yeah, because if they're not on the screen, then the sound would have to come through my computer. Sorry.
Stop the recording.
Yeah,
Just to be.
Pause it, just pause it.
Katie Murphy's in the.
You're in the
waiting room.
breakout room right now.
Yeah.
Those coffees, Starbucks here.
I apologize.
Okay, Katie in. And. Okay.
Are you able to chat with them and let them
I
know?
need just to project this when they're there.
Not there, Katie, share screen here.
I know. A Florence attorney told me the other day, said something about like sympathy for HLs. We go, I know you have that. Like, sometimes it's a bonsai, sometimes it's not.
I don't know how to make this work.
You know what, if I go in through AirTrack, it will project my screen up there. Again, will I be able to use the microphone?
I don't know.
Why don't we go back to the other room like we've done in the past, so that we're all in that room?
Yeah,
And then just, I think.
I'll
that's-
walk down.
So normally what we've done is take
I see
everybody
Aaron,
else
so
into
I'm
the
like-
waiting room
Okay.
instead.
And then I
That's
see
what
him
I was
around
trying to get us to do
the
at the
bridge, just
beginning.
waving at me. I'm
And
like,
then they'll just wait, you all use this,
right through.
and then when you're ready, you bring them back.
Yeah, and then we
That's
re-record.
Call there or
So
something.
somebody just let them know that they're gonna get invited to go back or.
Well, you're gonna go back to the main room.
It'll
so you
turn
can-
on.
I feel like, oh, you guys are taking way too much.
I just called them all back.
Did you close the breakout room?
And then you'll take the other people that are.
So, yeah, so,
Just know, just so you know, I don't know if other people are gonna be in this room when we first come back, so just
Okay.
be nice.
Oh, nice. He was driving with Meryl was in the car.
Jen.
Clyde. As the Grinch.
There's no recording devices.
No, we checked. That's a remote. I didn't like, unless anything.
So is everybody that's waiting back in, okay? Okay, so we are out of executive session and we are taking no action. All right, so moving into committee reports.
So,
We are recording, right?
Yes.
they're up 13 students, and right now they have a $412 surplus.
Pizza party.
Yeah.
That the budget committee reported that there was an 11.9. I just think this is such an incredible number that I had to share. 11.9 increase in health insurance. And they also used $95,000 of reserve funds. They could use $95,000 of reserve funds, but they don't have that reserve for next year. So that's the problem that they're facing. And therefore, there's going to be an increase in the local assessments. So students that will be sending, right now, they're looking at a 2.5% increase. They're trying to keep it as low as possible because they don't want to punish the sending schools, but they've got the same problems that we have. What's better?
So for the TRSU board update, all of the information presented today was presented at TRSU as normal. The only other side business was, we talked again about bringing the policy governance in at the different levels, like the TRSU level versus the GM level. The level board is kind of having their own discussions. We didn't take any action at that time. That's pretty much it. Transportation meet. And then outreach and public.
Outreach is pretty short and sweet. We got our board bulletin out with a couple small tweaks, which went fine. And then we also got a survey out. Julie was there, huge help. Thank you. So we got the survey out, and at our next meeting, we're going to be looking hopefully at some of those responses. Did we give you that time?
I think we gave, I forgot what the deadline was, but it was in time to
January
see
1st.
whatever we got from, yeah. I haven't looked at the form to see what's.
Okay. Emma just reminded me the deadline for that is January 1st. Went out to the students and parents, and we're looking forward to looking at that data and making some suggestions on how to improve the websites.
And if you sent to all the board members the survey, I don't get to the school, so I don't get it.
Say again?
Can the survey be sent to the board members that don't?
Yeah.
We sent it out to school messenger, right?
Yeah.
That's how you send it
Original.
out, so we can just forward the message.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks.
Tuck, I didn't think of it the night of our last meeting, but the outreach committee coincides with the GM open forum.
Oh.
And so, I mean, I have been trying to attend that for Lane to monitor Zoom room, and I can't be in both places at once, but more importantly, if you want people to attend,
Yeah,
both
right,
open
right.
forum and outreach committee, we might want to reconcile that.
Okay. Thanks for bringing that up. I wouldn't have caught that for a while, so I'll talk to you.
All right, so you guys will come up with a different date. Okay, all right. Any questions for any of the board updates? No, okay. All right, we'll move into the first round of public comments.
Good evening, Randy Miles from Chester. I'm here to talk a little bit about the restructuring. I know you wanted some more input from the public and stuff like that. I'm not quite sure where that all comes from, whether it just comes from public meeting or whether they send stuff in. But anyways, everything that I'm hearing about this is pretty sad. You as a board only have so much control about trying to put the money where it best can go. And we keep needing more and more, and we keep losing more and more. I just want to throw an idea on it. It's just an idea. But it's something that may be beneficial down the pike. And that is possibly talking and looking into the state with all our situations that we have, with the buildings and what they need for repairs, with the with the schools being popularized with the students. There's no remedy to try and fill these classrooms and get more to offset the taxpayers' base. It'll take a long time to get people in. So as a long-term thing, I was wondering if the possibility to look down the road would be approaching the state and seeing if we may be one of the first areas to get a new school. I know it sounds outrageous, and it was the last thing I would have thought. I would really like to see us put the money in here, but we keep losing ground, and the budget keeps going up astronomically. And it's going to get to a point where it's going to be really sad. And if we don't do something now, we're going to all be faced with the situation of laying a lot of people off. The state is going to come down on us. There's no question that they are going to do more to try and cut costs on places. If we wait to listen to them, it may be too late. If we start early enough, we may have a voice in this about where maybe we can do this, what we want in these schools. And I think the state is going to go to those avenues. And this is something that's going to take many years. So nothing is going to happen quickly. But if we're on the forefront of this, the state might be more open to communicate with us and let us have a say and some input in this. I've talked to a lot of people about this because it's something I didn't want to say on my own. And I wanted to have an input from them. They have kids in school, they're taxpayers. And they thought about it. I asked them one day and I said, I don't want to hear your response until the next day. I talked to them the next day. They thought, yeah, because above having a school in our community, their number one focus is we want the kids to get better educations. And out of those schools, I think you're going to get that most definitely. And it's going to be offset by the taxpayer. So it's nothing that's going to happen now, but I think it may be a good idea to maybe start thinking about that. Because I would hate to see the states cut these schools, you know, more sooner than later, and then us have to lay people off. At least now we can prepare for it and maybe start offsetting some stuff on our own. The second and last thing I wanted to say too is if we go with one of these options with putting the preschools in, was it truly looked upon without any possibility of hiring without having to hire new staff? Is there any way those classes could be condensed a little bit and one of those teachers move up to that position? The taxpayers, you know, there is a limit. We all want the schools to do good, but there are limits with the taxpayers. And it's really crunching, and they don't see a lot of positive things coming back. And I know it's hard. Everybody wants money for this program, that program, and whatever. And they're all important, but we can't fund them all. We're just going to, you know, cripple ourselves down the road. So that's just food for thought, really. And I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
See anyone else? Public. Speak. All right. So, board comments. Does the board have any comments?
Well, I'll say something quick. As a put it out there, I was on the CTS principals report. I was pretty proud to see Cavendish ranked #2 elementary school in the state. That was pretty amazing. Coming from a Chester.
Yeah.
Very good job, Tom.
Okay, so that's going to bring us back into new business, which brings us to B, which is another executive session. And then also policy. Do we just want to go through the one policy and then go into executive session, or do we want to do executive session? And then, I guess, just do the policy. All right. So let's stop here. It's a very long policy. I'm assuming people read books. Okay. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts? And I'm not, is this a second read or a first read?
I think it's a first read, so
Yeah,
it's
second.
all I the first one.
Okay.
Last name.
I didn't remember seeing it before.
No, I just, between, sometimes like with TRSU, it's on repeat in my brain somewhere, so sometimes I should do it. Okay, so this is our first read. You know, if you want to take time to look at it, you have a month, come back. Okay. All right, so unless there's any discussion about that, then we can backtrack into executive session.
I just have one quick question about the highlights.
That's what's changed.
So that's what's new in the
Or
policy from the
potential
old.
change.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so now I will look for a motion to enter into the second executive session.
I propose that the board enter an executive session under Title I, Section 313A1 to discuss personnel. Additionally, I suggest we invite Lane to join us in this session.
Is there a second?
Second.
So all in favor of entering into executive session?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are again in executive session. So,
Sorry.
Sorry.
You ready to do the breakout rooms again?
No, I'm
just gonna do the waiting.
You're gonna wait. Did you get your volume issue at all?
no, I was
I
afraid
think
to
his
touch it,
mic was
but
just quiet.
we won't have any. Oh, actually, will we have? Yeah, we've got a couple board members.
I think the lawyer's mic was just.
So
quiet.
Jeff.
You might be able to turn it up here.
80.
Okay. It was like when Kate talked, she was fine.
Okay, yeah, but no, I don't.
You gonna stop the recording?
Come in,
Recording.
come in, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed tomorrow.
Okay, perfect.
So then I'm not kicking them out.
You're putting them in the meeting.
Recording
stopped. On the three dots next to their name.
I don't know why I chose silent group shows.
Not yourself.
You'll have to plan your seat next time.
Yeah, I have to go transition to the other side.
I stopped.
Or just wear
This is gonna be that one.
Disappointed.
2 executive sessions.
Really?
I'm taking the Celtics.
At least it's not 10 to 11 o'clock budget meetings.
That's true.
That's what we're doing.
Wow, so
We're on our way.
what is your gut feel about that budget in terms of tax rate compared to from last year? I don't know what the biggest changes were last year, if this is in the same range, if this is less or if this is.
I think any further tax increase is gonna be met with hostility and it's,
We are
But
recording.
I think we have a much better message and
Yes.
explanation
Yes,
that
yeah,
has been
absolutely,
happening.
yeah,
I actually have gotten really good feedback about how you've been explaining it,
Yeah.
and it's making more sense to people. So I think as long as we double down on that and get the message out and that explanation, I think we're gonna be in a little bit better shape.
I guess
That's
it's
a good
kind of
point.
the outreach is probably the
Yeah.
most important piece. Getting
Okay, I just have to announce we're out of
I was
executive
hearing that
session.
telegraph through the call pressure. Yeah, all right.
We're out of executive session and taking no action. All right, so now we're gonna move into old business, which is an update on the restructuring.
Well, how the world ended at the last meeting was we had the recommendations that were on the table. A variety of different ways of adding space at Chester Andover through construction. The first was with a stick building is what they call it. So they could actually come out and build it there. It could also be the I don't remember what you call them, well, we got the brick and mortar, the modules. It could also be the modules. It could be a brick and mortar building, or it could be an addition on the side. The addition is what Joey is most interested in and thinks it would, keep the kids kind of together more cohesively. It would feel like more of a community, but it's also the most expensive. The brick and mortar is in the middle, and then the stick building is the cheapest way to go. In addition to that, we talked about trying to ameliorate the enrollment problem at Cavendish, right? The enrollment's low. And so that's the idea about bringing in the preschool there. But it's more than just about the enrollment pieces. It's all the benefits that we would get to be able to work with those students early and be able to identify any disabilities, any problems they have, and kind of remediate them before they get more serious as they go through the grades. And it should be an attractant for families as well. There's still not a lot of districts around that have their own preschools. And then the board voted to not consider the change for Baltimore. And other than that, those are the biggest pieces. The thing I can say is, the board has the ability to kind of bring up other ideas and other thoughts that we can kind of hash out. Obviously, the easiest thing to do is we take kids from Chester and put them in Cavendish, right? But we know that's not going to fly. The longer term picture, which was spoken about in public session, and again, I'm not pushing it. I'm thinking strategically is that idea of a new building. But again, that would require kind of consolidation. We don't want to build, 4 new buildings. We want to build one really nice one and get all the kids in there and take advantage of the benefits of the magnitude of the scale. And that was actually one of the higher priority ideas that the team was talking about. So unless there's questions or.
I was gonna say, I know people kind of individually shared thoughts and concerns. I mean, this would not be a bad time to bring those up. I don't know if we're gonna get into an in-depth, discussion and debate at this point, but, I think to keep the conversation going, And moving forward, we need to like, not just be talking amongst ourselves, but bringing it to the board and to Lane.
I'm personally in favor of adding a preschool to Cavendish and bringing in some modular units to just kind of get through the next year or so. What I was hearing from earlier conversations is that there may be new buildings in our future, and I'd rather not have just invested a bunch of money into a permanent thing if we're going to have to invest a bunch of money into a different permanent thing a couple years later. I would ask about the preschool just to kind of close the loop on Randy's comment from earlier. I'm assuming the reason why teachers couldn't be shuffled around and things are consolidated is it's different trainings or certifications, or you just don't have enough people to begin with?
Certifications, it was a good idea. We didn't look at the possibility based on the numbers. Based on the numbers, it probably is possible.
Okay.
So it's a good idea, but the certification is the biggest piece. It's a little bit different requirement when you're working with kids that are age 4 and under, or under 4, which would be happening in the preschool, right? You get to get 3 or 4.
Also, I know Cavendish is famous for the small classroom sizes, so. Yeah. Nobody's getting sad about it.
What happened?
I think it's just kids.
The tournament's getting out. People were screaming.
Okay, well, I was ready to call 911, so.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
It's fine.
We're good.
It's all fine.
All shrieking.
So it was
Good
fun.
responses.
I actually wrote that down to check.
Okay.
So that's something that I'll research. And this is a good time too, that if the board has the ideas and says, hey, can you go check on the possibility of this? Yeah.
I'd be curious, but I'd want to know how it would impact the classroom sizes at Cavendish too, because I know that's something that's really important for the folks in that school.
Yeah, so as a starting point, I'm in complete agreement. I think that the preschool is a good idea and that it is one of the kind of gentlest ways to increase the numbers in the other grades as well. And I also think that the modular approach at Chester is the best way to go, in part because like the piece that really convinced me that additional space was the way to go instead of moving people was teachers saying what we need is room for those small one-on-one interactions. And I don't see, perhaps it's not ideal to have to move those one-on-one interactions to another building, but it is also not disruptive in the same way that having a whole group of kids put in a different building might be. So I really think a modular would meet what I heard staff saying is the biggest need.
I thought the modular would be used for classrooms for students, not for one-on-one.
Classrooms, and we could put offices in there as needed. But I talked with Joey for quite a while. The reality is if she can get the 2 spaces cleared out of the main building, they're able to get the office space they need and rearrange what they have to reclaim their office space with that. I didn't ask her about the actual logistics, but she was very confident.
Were the modulars something, what I don't want to see is kids having to suit up to go to a classroom. So would the modulars be, somehow attached in a way that the kids would not have to take time to get dressed and walk through the rain and then, and then in reverse?
Yeah. So we could, as part of it, my understanding is that it literally would be like behind Lauren's house is where they would be placed. There's no reason that you can't build an enclosed walkway.
But that's going to be in the driveway.
White House didn't have a fire line.
It was terrible, but we didn't like it.
Yeah, but it was also on the floodplain.
Yeah. It wasn't. I think it was designed for. It wasn't designed for a classroom.
It wasn't
Yeah.
permanent, yeah.
I do have a crazy idea. Since you're looking for ideas.
I got one after you.
Good, glad to hear it.
Crazy or?
No, it's not a crazy kind of idea, it's just not gonna be a popular. I spent a lot of time in that library, which is a huge space. I love the library space, and I'm a real fan of libraries. And I'm a fan of Kata Welch, who runs that library. It looked to me as though it would be very easy to divide that library space up into 3 or 4 individual classrooms or spaces or therapy spaces. Because they all have access off the hallway. This is the very unpopular part of this. The town library is 600 feet away. Kata worked with the town Cavendish Library, in the same building. But she did a wonderful job of bringing in books and bringing in kids and having library programs. It's not like it's a mile, it's 5 minutes long. And it save a huge amount of money. Keep people in the building.
How would you feel if the kids in Cavendish had to walk? Honestly.
My kids, my older kids, walk to their library, and I do have a problem with it. It's a great luxury to have a library in the building, but it's also, a rather special education in that space in the library. And I love libraries.
I'm gonna throw one out there. Because nobody else talks about it. I know it's only our district we're allowed to talk about, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyway. All towns have said that the Gulf is a deadly road and nobody should go over it.
Treacherous.
So why doesn't Cavendish, let alone Holly, all get together, make one big school?
So
we'd love to.
Absolutely.
Actually, I'll make comment.
I'm saying it publicly because nobody else wants to, and I'll say it.
So the first piece on yours, it might be possible. There are regulations about access to a library for students, but I don't think those regulations say it has to be in the building. But I can double check on that. Your idea was talked about. I think part of it is the time frame that would have to happen because you'd have to have town votes and things to move things around. But I would argue goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, where I think I was freaking people out is, we should be one district. They are having problems over there right now in terms of, what the taxes are going to be this year. And that's not even taking into account that their buildings aren't in as good a shape as yours are. They have some major repairs that they need on top of it. So it's not a pretty situation.
But if you combined all 3 elementary schools that are over there, we're not paying for 2 of those buildings anymore. That's where you're saving money.
And they don't have to put the money into repairing.
Correct.
Right. But again, you're
Wait a
going to,
minute, if we're all one district though.
because that's how Cavendish.
We would be paying, but you
Yeah.
can get rid of 2 buildings.
I don't want it to be like billed like, oh, it comes off of our bill. I mean, like, it still would be.
But
our
you'd
bill.
have more hands
Yeah. you'd
paying
have
that
more-
bill.
Yeah.
And we could make Cheryl model
Oh, yeah.
what the cost would be.
She can do that, no problem.
Yeah.
She actually can. I mean, I've been pretty
So can I
impressed.
ask, when we brought that idea up, like, at
I thought everybody.
the very beginning, like prior, like when Warren was having
I
this
don't either.
conversation, what we were told was something along the lines of Ludlow would be more than happy to take the Cavendish kids. They would not be interested in taking the Cavendish building or the Cavendish teachers.
That's true.
So
I don't know about the teachers, they don't have a choice, and it's like that would go by seniority within the district.
So how does that work then? So we're still looking at if, right, what would we be talking about in regards to buildings? I mean, that's what I'm saying, like, if we're talking about becoming one district, where are people going?
The ideal situation, based upon what it feels like the state is headed towards, is either one building for the district or one elementary and one middle high school. Because if we
Sorry,
could
I
get
gotta
this,
step out.
no problem. But if we could get that's the reason the PCD piece here. If we can get that cleaned up and get that taken care of, we have more options, right? We can build a middle school concept here. And you get all the savings, you'll have to put some money into the existing structures here. But it's a heck of a lot more doable than how things currently stand. I don't know what the tax savings would be. You did some modeling, at least over on Ludlow Mount Holly side, because we talked about, hey, you're still going to have a 30-cent increase, but if you close down one school and brought them all to Ludlow, I think we didn't really look at the staffing as much as we could have, but it was at least a $500,000 savings. So
If you're one district, all the high school kids would have to come to Green Mountain.
Yeah.
There'd be no possible choice.
Yeah, you could work out what you want, but
Yeah, you would have to grandfather those kids that are out.
Yeah.
And all the towns have to vote.
Yeah.
but
Right, and that was why this never flew in the first place, right? Because everybody said, Buffalo, Mount High will never give up their school choice. They will have a choice.
well, Mount Holly technically,
Anticipated, right?
a good part of it's closer to what? Yeah. And so, that's the other possibility is, give it up to Mill River. If Mill River, wants it, yeah.
Well, and it's, it's not our district, so we shouldn't spend time talking about it, but like then would also be the loss too, like, the revenue on that side, so
No,
I should stay.
yeah, we'll upset Jamie, but, kind of talk about it, but no, it's just discussion. But, there are some potential benefits there as being and especially taking advantage of the magnitude of scale. Because it's not just money savings, the education's better. You got more resources. You can do more programming with the kids. Just usually is a better way.
So just what would happen if Cavendish, Ludlow, Mount Holly became like their own part of a district? Like, are you talking about, so you're wanting to do one whole district and then just kind of like regional schools?
I think if I'm thinking about it in terms of kids and in terms of cost, one whole district is probably the way to go. But, that's the other possibility is, maybe Cavendish decides that if Ludlow Mount Holly is willing, that they move over. But the problem is, and that would be the same thing like if Mount Holly went to Mill River, they'll take the kids, they don't want the building.
Yeah.
That's going to be the problem. Is that, kids, you get your ADM and you don't have to pay for all the upkeep and the facilities costs and repairs and combination building.
So if like the Cavendish students, would there be room for the Cavendish students in like the Ludlow building?
My understanding based on people that I've talked to in the past is yes. Yeah, but I'd have to double check. I have to check the occupancy.
There's like 240. My kids are there.
Didn't we do
240, you said?
Didn't we do a cost analysis about if Cavendish went over to that district?
Last year, when you first started talking, I didn't say a big savings one way or the other for any of the options that we talked about.
Well, they were keeping their school.
I'm not trying to pick
Yeah,
on
but we weren't,
Cavendish, but I'm just-
yeah.
Yeah.
The problem with it.
I'm
I
just-
think, we have to make bigger moves.
Kate's got her hand up too.
Yeah,
Right,
let's see, the
right.
high school
Sorry.
closed and the kids go to Springfield and Bellows Falls and Woodstock. I think it's more expensive.
Can I ask openly why you are trying so hard to close GM? I mean, it's not like lost on anybody. I just would like to know.
Yeah, I think it's toxic, it underperforms, there's college preparedness sucks.
It's what?
College preparedness. Graduation rate leaves a lot to be desired. I think it's ossified and inflexible and unimaginative, and it's a disgrace.
Just wanted to hear what you had to say.
Kate's got her hand up still.
Kate, sorry.
Thanks. I'm going to go back a topic. One, it feels like too much to talk about coming into one district at 9:00 at night. That seems more.
I'll second that.
That seems more like a long-term strategy, and I think what we're looking at right now is the immediate needs of our buildings, the ones that are actually in the district that we're responsible for. And becoming one district doesn't make less kids going through the Gulf. It actually makes more kids going through the Gulf because we would be required to send the Ludlow kids there and Mount Holly unless they went someplace else. So it doesn't solve that. That's not my primary issue, but that is just putting that out there. But I'd love to like put this in the future pile and have a conversation at like 6:30 in a meeting.
What I was saying though was Cavendish to go to the other river, not be.
Like school choice, like we go to, like Cavendish goes to the, yeah, I mean, and that's, we did talk about that publicly, and that is something that, there's a lot of hoops to jump through to make that happen in a way that's like nearly impossible. And our communities haven't put forth a petition to do that, but I know there has been a lot of talk about doing that.
I just worry that like we put so much time and effort, and then we can, there was this proposal and, everybody's still deadlocked, like I said, there was a lot of individual conversations happening afterward that had I think some pretty valid points and some thoughts. And, I feel like unless we keep saying, okay, that's not going to work, or this isn't going to work, or I want this, or whatever, we're just going to keep this repetitive cycle going inevitably. I mean, at some point, everybody's kids will just age out of school and nobody's going to care. And
You gotta have kids first.
Are we deadlocked? Are we deadlocked on?
I mean, I don't even have kids in school, but I feel like, like this is becoming so protracted. We're losing actual sight of the goals. I mean, I don't mind sharing some of the things that if people don't want to say them, I don't mind sharing some of the feedback, which was, I was told by a few people that they felt the proposal didn't actually solve the problem, reach the goals. It sounded like it was just kind of placating all the players, and it was going to cost more, not redistribute what we had. Some people were, just not feeling like well, basically it was that the goals were met. They're like, that didn't reach what we were expecting. So I just, I guess maybe what I'd like people to come back with at some point would just be more, I guess being willing to come to this table, not necessarily be popular, and talk about what we actually want to see happen. So the superintendent and the administrative team can bring back something that is going to be what we're looking for.
Small counterpoint in light of Occam's razor, sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. If Cavendish is underpopulated, put preschool kids in Cavendish. If Chester doesn't have enough space, add space to Chester. Personally, I felt like the suggestions address those 2 points, which seem to be the most pressing issues, really well. And it's simple, and it's not really convoluted, which I love. I think it's awesome. Buy a couple buildings, put them down there. Done. I recognize, Cheryl, it's a little more complicated than that, but I would, a question for the administrative team for the next meeting would be, talking to Joey, is there a way that if we added, say, 2 modular units, now she has this much more space, is there a way to keep the entire student body together? Maybe it's splitting the library up into a couple classrooms, or just adding 1 classroom to the library. Maybe it's taking the main office space and moving it into one of those buildings and turning that into a classroom. I'd be curious to know if she had a couple modular units and absolutely had to keep all the kids together so they don't have to get dressed to go to any of their classes, would it be possible? Because I think if it's possible and it solves our space issue and we can add kids to Cavendish with a preschool program that then could be moved into a different building or expanded to encompass a wider district or anything, it just seems like the most flexible way to address our issues quickly. And I think that's a good idea right now with all the uncertainty out there.
Yes. Just gotta write my thought.
I was just going to say very similar to what Doug said after the last meeting and how we got there. It felt like since I've been involved in this process, we made the most progress towards we actually have a pretty good idea of what is going to solve these issues. So I'm just a little, it feels like we've kind of derailed the train again here. And the Ludlow Cavendish merger, we talked about that a while back, and everyone kind of came to the consensus that it was a non-starter due to X, Y, and Z issues. is it all right? Let's work with what we have at hand. And I thought we were making progress with add some space to Chester one way or another. We haven't nailed that down. Add preschool to Cavendish and see what the state does to us in the next 2 years on top of that. So I thought today was more around like,
I thought we were like.
what kind of space are we gonna add?
I think we still
Yeah.
can be, but it just,
Yeah.
what I'm finding as the chair is people are having conversations individually or with me and I'm hearing about them, but then when we get here and I say, okay, people, let's talk, everyone's like,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah, I guess that-
So we just get nowhere and, and things are just, they're just, another delay. I mean, like, so we either need to come to the table and be willing to not necessarily be popular for a week or two and, make some decisions and take some actions.
I just think it's about the cost, that by adding the preschool and adding space to Chester, we're increasing, both situations require spending money. So here we're talking about increases and budgets that are not going to pass. And both those moves, while they may solve, first of all, we don't know how many preschoolers we're going to get. So we may not solve the problem, but we have to spend money.
But at some point in time, the check will be in the mail from FEMA to reimburse. That was the other reason that we kind of settled on it. Yeah, you got to pay it up front. But the nice thing is if you put it
That's
in,
for the money.
yeah, if you put it in the budget now, when we get reimbursed later, then it can go in the reserve fund, and now you've got money in case something blows up in the middle of the year that you can draw from. Like $1 million in there. So.
Thank you, because I thought that was what we discussed last time as well, as the budgetary impact of this, and we could slide it under without making a significant or tangible splash in the budget. So again, it's like I left the last one.
I kind of missed
All right,
that.
we got traction.
Okay.
We're moving in the right direction. Now tonight we're, I don't know.
I don't know. I just want people to start talking,
Yeah,
but,
and I appreciate that, Adrian, because I'm not hearing those things.
There's too many unknowns though. I mean, you don't know what you're gonna get for any kind of money for this building, if you're going to. You're talking about going out to bond. So say we passed that $21.5 million bond a couple of years ago, and then they start closing buildings down that you just put a whole bunch of money into. You're still paying that $21.5 million bond for 20 years through your taxes that you didn't need because the state's getting rid of that. There's too many unknowns for me to sit here and say, I think we need to throw a bunch of money at this or this. The elementary school in Chester, yes, it needs room. Throw buildings up there. Cavendish wants the preschool, go ahead, put that there. But talking bonds for big money that you're not going to get back with a state that could come up and say, hey, you just dumped $5 million in that building. We're going to close it down.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. That's not business. This is business. People hate to say it, but school is business.
Yeah, the only thought I have that, and I don't know if it would provide clarity or not, is so let's say that we were going for a new building. I don't even know what the name of it is here. We used to call it the School Building Authority. We would actually have to apply to the state and have them involved. And my assumption is that they would look at us and go, this is a bad idea right now, or you know what, this is a good idea, because they have an inkling behind the scenes of what's going on. And so they might be able to inform us, they might not. But that would be about the only saving grace in terms of trying to get more knowledge about, what may be coming down the pipe.
Until you have a new election and then those people change.
But yeah.
Yeah,
We can't sit here and do nothing.
Right. I know. I'm not saying it.
I
I'm not saying it.
Well, let me put the pressure out there for you, because we have to make a decision for FEMA in order to move forward. with
Right.
the 428 project.
Is there a deadline for that?
I got the impression.
Whether it's self-imposed or
They
not?
want it sooner than later.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't know if that's because, first person gets whatever next money comes down the pipe or why, but it felt like we really wanted to.
It's the path of least resistance with what's going on.
My personal thing is that for FEMA, you're gonna get paid.
Yeah.
It's just my,
Yes.
so I'm all for that. For elementary school, go for it.
With a 90%.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So it's funny.
Be done.
Correct.
And for the preschool, it was a one-time investment of, I can't remember, like, what,
40.
So the 40,000 is the one time to get the equipment, get it up to speed in terms of what's required for the
and then the
regs.
salary.
The salaries would be there, but we'll check to see the idea that Tuck had about,
So Randy had it. I was not.
Yeah.
Utilizing existing stuff. And the maximum expansion that will be allowed will only ever get to 20 kids. Was that the correct number?
So if we have 2 people there, it's 20 kids. If we want more, we need another body. It's one body per 10 kids.
Okay. That's, yeah.
Depending on the square footage, yeah.
Okay. So the maximum increase to Cavendish's student population with the addition of a preschool will be
Would be
20.
20 for next year.
Okay.
Kate has right.
Kate,
No, I can't get off mute today. Yeah, I am gonna go back in time again, because I do feel like we maybe have agreement. Maybe we're ready to take a vote on something. Like, I'm hearing everybody say modulars in preschool, but maybe I'm mishearing.
Oh, that's correct.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm ready to vote.
Nobody showed up at the Green Mountain Union open forum to talk about this a week or so ago, so I don't know what that implies, but it seems like people are kind of settled into something.
That makes me kind of sad. Nobody showed up.
But it might be an
that's,
indication.
well, but that's how it goes. You know, people only come for the juicy stuff.
And
Wait till
I
there's
just
a new
hate,
mascot.
yeah, I just hate like when someone has a birthday party and no one shows up. That's so sad to me.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I personally want to hear this laid out one more time. You know, like, this is what we're doing. These are the 2 things we're voting on. And I don't even have the paper in front of me to reference.
Yeah.
I'm happy to like put it on for a vote next month. Like, I'm not trying to delay this. Of all people, I'm not trying to delay this. But
We believe.
It's
But
gonna
I-
have to be next month because it's
You're just going over us.
yeah, I'm happy to, put it on for next month, but I need it in front of me so I can back and forth reference and make sure that I'm not voting on something that I don't.
I'd also love to know the answers to, can Joey keep the student body together, and could we repurpose folks already established? Just making things.
thinking about deadlines. Your meeting is the latest in each month. If you don't decide until late January and the deadline for folks to vote is the 24th, you might want to have a special meeting that just focuses just on.
We're adding a budget meeting, so maybe we could do budget restructuring. How do people feel about that?
Yep.
Yeah, be much like that.
Sure. Yep. Love it.
And that'll make sure she's got time, if a decision is made to add in what needs to happen.
So when would people like to have that meeting?
5 minutes.
Okay, so.
Ideally for me, after January 6th.
We have the 6th, the 13th, and then the 21st.
If you're having FEMA though, don't you gotta figure out when they can?
I think if this is the evening meeting, we should have less trouble trying to get them. But once you set a date, I'll go. Tomorrow I'll reach.
I like, what about the 9th? Does the 9th work for everybody? It's a Thursday, so it kind of tracks with our normal.
I have another meeting, I have a meeting.
I have another word.
What'd you say? Just stay off mute. Oh, she hung up.
Trouble.
Oh my God. I have a word.
I hear ya. Talk, I hear ya.
They updated my iPad and the buttons are in different places. It's annoying.
So what did you say about, she said the 9th, the 9th?
I can't do
No, it
that.
does not
I
work.
can't do the 9th.
Yeah, and I think we have negotiations.
The 10th?
No, we have negotiations on the 7th.
We've got, one of them out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 2.
January?
10th? It's a Friday.
Yes.
I can remember.
We don't do meetings.
13th? It's a Monday.
13th works for
I
me.
can do the 13th, but didn't we say we had to do it earlier?
No, that only increases it by like 2 days.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, like, I mean, do we do, I mean.
No, that was
That's a good
still-
day.
That would still be fine.
Okay.
The 13th.
13 work.
What was the concern about doing it on the 16th then?
Well,
That
that's
was-
the
that's
regular.
3 days.
Well,
That's
if,
what I'm confused
if,
about.
if you have to vote on the 16th on the budget,
Mhm.
and you haven't decided on potentially adding money to it to support this work.
Oh, I'm forgetting that we're adding the budget into this. I'm still thinking about
Yeah,
this.
so,
Okay.
so she wouldn't be able to add it and decide that night and then.
Okay,
vote
so the
on it.
13th?
Yeah,
Okay.
if I'm making any sense.
No, I'm not.
Yes.
I've been up since 4 AM. All right,
Ooh.
so 1/13/25. Okay, so that'll be regarding the budget /restructuring with FEMA present. Okay. All right, are we good to move on?
Yeah.
All right, let's last this. Okay, so we've already addressed future agenda items, which are, we're gonna have a special meeting for. I feel like there was one other thing somebody wanted on there. Public comments. Our next meeting will be the 13th of January, the special meeting, and then our next regular meeting will be January 16th, 2025. Motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
We are adjourned.
Happy holidays.